This is a translated version of the article, "The American Dream is Killing Us," by Mark Manson. You can find the link to the original article down in the description. Picture this: you're a kid again, and you decide you want to sell lemonade in your neighborhood. No sooner said than done, you throw together a tiny little stand, scribble a sign with a crayon, and just like that, you're in business. Day 1, one customer shows up. Day 2, 2. Day 3, 3. Day 4, 4. Within a single month, you're pouring lemonade for dozens of people a day, and demand just keeps climbing. And it gets even sweeter. Not only is the whole neighborhood lining up for your lemonade, but the lemons themselves keep getting cheaper. At first, $1 gets you 5 lemons. By week 2, that same dollar buys 8. Week 3, 12. And just like that, within a few months, you've quietly transformed into a full-blown lemonade money printing machine. Of course, word gets around. The legend of you and your magical little lemonade empire spreads, and before long, every other kid on the block is dragging out a table and setting up shop right next to yours. But hey, no big deal, demand just keeps going up and up. So why wouldn't you welcome the other kids in? You even cheer them on. This neighborhood is full of opportunity. Anyone can make money selling lemonade here. And as if by some kind of magic, the more lemonade people drink, the cheaper lemons get. You and all the other kids start to realize something: it's basically impossible not to make money in this neighborhood. The only way to fail would be to be lazy or totally useless. Your shot at lemonade riches depends purely on how much time and effort you're willing to throw in. There's no ceiling on what you can earn, and the only thing standing between you and your lemonade-fueled dream life is yourself. So it's no surprise that a whole new culture starts taking root in your neighborhood. People talk about the kids who can move serious volumes of lemonade, and the kids who just can't. Stories circulate about that one prodigy who can stand at his stand for 20 hours straight. And then there's the eye-rolling, the head-shaking, the gossip about some poor kid who probably couldn't sell ice water in the middle of a desert. The kids start to see life through the simplest possible lens: what you get is exactly what you put in. In other words, you deserve whatever you end up with. If you want better things, you'd better be smarter, work harder, hustle more, go grab those opportunities. Time rolls on. Word about this miracle neighborhood, now serving lemonade to thousands of customers a day, spreads far and wide. Kids from faraway places start flocking in to join the lemonade world, willing to take the worst jobs going, squeezing lemons, hauling out the trash. They take these jobs gladly, because they believe that in a neighborhood with limitless opportunity, they'll inch upward, step by step, until they too are rolling in lemonade money. This goes on for months, and the kids in your neighborhood start picking up on something: their block must be a special place, practically hand-picked by God himself. After all, if kids are clawing their way in from everywhere else just to sell a drop of lemonade, this place has to be hiding some kind of cosmic opportunity, right? On top of that, the kids here are richer and work twice as hard as the kids anywhere else. If this isn't a chosen land, what is? Then one day, things start to shift. First, you hear that the Japanese kids have figured out a way to make twice as much lemonade at half the cost. There's no way you can match those prices. Then come the rumors of a massive wave of migration: hungry Chinese kids moving into your neighborhood, selling lemonade for dirt cheap and, naturally, peeling away customers who used to buy only from you. On top of that, some of the more successful lemonade tycoons start scooping up the underperforming stands. What used to be a market of hundreds of kids running hundreds of independent stands now turns into a game played by a few super rich kids. To cut costs and squeeze more profit for their investors, these kids start paying lower wages and demanding people work harder. After all, that's the gospel of the neighborhood: everyone deserves exactly what they get. At first, this all happens slowly. Then the ugly truth sets in: the kids in the neighborhood are making less money, even though they're working harder than ever. But here's the thing: beliefs always lag behind reality. It's like people who lose a huge amount of weight and still see themselves as overweight and unattractive for years afterward. Or kids who got bullied growing up and, even as adults, instinctively assume that nobody could possibly accept them. Same deal here. Even as the harsh new economics of the lemonade stands plays out right in front of them, the kids' beliefs stay frozen in place. The culture buried deep inside their young minds hasn't budged an inch. The result? They start blaming each other. The belief can't possibly be wrong, so someone must be sabotaging everything. The educated kids, the ones who shelled out time and money for fancy degrees in lemon squeezing and street-side sales, now look down on the kids who don't have the same credentials, calling them weak, clueless, the architects of their own misery. Meanwhile, the hard-working kids who started from nothing turn around and resent the kids who got the cushier jobs, dismissing them as privileged brats who couldn't survive a real downturn. Pretty quickly, the whole neighborhood starts folding in on itself, eating its own tail. Fights break out. Conflicts simmer up, extreme, vicious, and increasingly political. All of it, the natural fallout of clinging to the same old assumptions while reality races off in another direction. From day one, Americans have always seen themselves as exceptional. But, if we're being honest, a huge chunk of that exceptionalism came from a stack of historical lucky breaks that just happened to land in our lap. In all of world history, no relatively hardworking and educated group of people has ever been handed a continent like this one, sparsely populated, overflowing with resources, huge in scale, and conveniently wrapped on both sides by oceans that kept potential invaders at a safe distance. For its first 300 years, America was basically that magical lemonade stand where customers just kept showing up like clockwork. While civilizations in Europe and Asia kept getting caught on the same wheel of history, rise, peak, decline, vanish, Americans never had to sweat those same limits. The country's economic potential almost felt like a gift from above, generations came and went, and the opportunities just kept flowing. That miraculous rise that pushed America to superpower status. It came from the smooth interplay of four distinct ingredients. 1. Unlimited land. From the very beginning, America just kept expanding. In barely a century after founding, we stretched from sea to shining sea. Through the 20th century, we kept elbowing our way into the Caribbean and the Pacific, most famously by adding Hawaii and Alaska to the family. All that real estate meant Americans always had access to cheap, fertile farmland. We sat on what felt like an endless reserve of natural resources, oil, coal, timber, precious metals, much of it still being mined and pumped today. 2. Cheap labor. Most of America has been sparsely populated for most of its history. Honestly, this was a real worry for the Founding Fathers. They figured America would need a steady stream of immigrants from all over the world just to keep the economy growing. So they built a democratic system that rewarded entrepreneurship, then used that system as a magnet to pull in talent from everywhere on Earth. The payoff? An endless conveyor belt of cheap, hard-working labor, right up to today. Oh, and back in the day, we also had another secret weapon, a form of ultra-cheap labor neatly packaged under the name slavery. 3. Unlimited creativity. If there's one thing America should genuinely brag about, it's this: we figured out how to build a system that pays handsome rewards for cleverness and creativity. If you've got a great idea, America has historically been the place where you can cash that idea in for the biggest possible payout. That system is exactly why so many of the major technological breakthroughs of the last few centuries can be traced back to the brilliant immigrants America somehow managed to attract. 4. Geographic isolation. Civilizations in Europe and Asia got invaded, conquered, knocked off the world stage over and over again. Time rolled forward like a tide, sweeping away whole peoples and cultures along the way. Every time this happened, society got dragged backward by destruction, and people had to trudge along, picking up their own footsteps and rebuilding from scratch. America dodged that fate because we were just too far away and too isolated. Think about it. If you were Napoleon, would you really build out a fleet of expensive warships and sail across the ocean for weeks just to invade America? Or would you just punch Italy in the face tomorrow morning? That isolation has kept America almost always safe. Apart from the Imperial Japanese strike on Pearl Harbor during World War II, which took enormous effort and cost, we've been more or less untouchable. Americans take this for granted and sometimes blow this invincibility out of proportion. But things can change. Keep in mind that just over the last 2 decades or so, Europe has gradually started feeling the pressure from the East, and a lot of countries on the continent are seriously spooked about the possibility of an invasion coming from that direction. The American dream is, at its core, the product of an incredible intersection, a prime location, abundant resources, vast territory, and creativity poured in from every corner of the globe. The American dream is beautifully simple. It's the rock-solid belief that anyone, you, me, my friend, your neighbor, can become wildly successful. We can have it all through hard work, creativity, and grit. Nothing else really gets a vote. Not circumstances. Not bad luck. Everyone just needs to be persistent, resilient, and willing to put in the hours. You too, as long as you're not lazy, that mansion with the 3-car garage and the shiny luxury rides is basically guaranteed to be yours. And this used to be absolutely true in America, back when the line of lemonade customers just kept growing, and land, labor, and creativity all kept piling up. Until recently. Down the road, historians might look back at September 11, 2001, and frame it as the turning point, the moment America's global dominance started slipping. But really, that was just the visible consequence of a bunch of forces that had quietly been chipping away at the country for decades. On most of the headline statistics, the average American today is doing way worse than their forebears. Some commentators are quick to blame young people, claiming they're more entitled, more selfish, lazier, and hopelessly glued to their phones. And while a few of those complaints aren't totally off base, the data actually shows the kids aren't really the root of the problem. Broadly speaking, modern Americans, and young people in particular, are the best educated, most productive generation in this young country's history. Here are a few charts to make this easier to picture. The share of Americans with a college degree is the highest it has ever been in history. Source: Census.gov. U.S. worker productivity has climbed steadily for the past 65 years straight. Source: Trading Economics. And yet unemployment and underemployment keep creeping up. Unemployment and underemployment rates. Source: Economic Policy Institute. It's the result of a shortage of jobs, especially middle-class ones. Despite Obama's headline-friendly claim of cutting unemployment in half during his term, most of that drop came from part-time gigs and low-wage work. According to this chart, most of the jobs created since the start of the post-recession recovery have been low-wage jobs. High-wage jobs come in second. And when it comes to middle-wage jobs, the recovery has been anything but impressive. Source: New York Times. The labor force participation rate is the percentage of working-age Americans who actually have a job. Pay attention to the downward slide ever since the Great Recession of 2008. Source: Trading Economics. Today, about 25% of people with a college degree are unemployed, and not even bothering to look for work anymore. Why is this happening? What went wrong? Where did we mess up? Did we really mess up? Who's to blame? Who can we drag on Twitter or roast at the next cocktail party? No one. It's nobody, really. The strategies and beliefs that built the foundation of this country have simply hit their limit. 1. Run out of land. We were essentially out of new land by the early 1900s. That's why America started poking into Cuba, the Philippines, and Guam. After 2 world wars, we figured out something the British never quite did: why bother spending all the time and money invading poor countries when you can just loan them money and pressure them into selling off their assets at fire sale prices? That was pretty much the American playbook through the Cold War. Despite the leader of the free world branding, America used this approach as a tool to extract value from third world countries: either open up and trade with America, let American corporations tap into your land and cheap labor, or get shut out and stay stuck in poverty. It worked. A wave of global markets cracked open for America, often in exchange for nothing more than a military guarantee against communism. But even that strategy is hitting a wall. Most of those once poor countries have developed enough that their labor is no longer dirt cheap or easy to exploit. In fact, some of these developing nations are going to be our direct competitors on the global stage pretty soon. 2. No more cheap labor. All the low-wage jobs have basically been shipped overseas. Why hire a bunch of local workers when you can build a factory in China and produce the same stuff for a quarter of the cost? Slavery is gone, so what better way to maximize profits than outsource every one of these jobs abroad? 3. Creativity is killing jobs, not creating them. This one might be the quietest and scariest factor. With the rise of IT, automation, and artificial intelligence, we just don't need as many humans in the loop as we used to. Remember walking into a CVS, listening to a robotic screen yell at you to bag your stuff, swipe your card, and get out? The whole world is heading that way. Accountants, pharmacists, even taxi and truck drivers will get replaced. We're talking about tens of millions of people losing their jobs with very little chance of ever returning to the labor force. And this storm doesn't just hit services. Manufacturing jobs got wiped out the same way, and that's a really serious problem. Contrary to what Trump likes to claim, U.S. manufacturing is producing twice as much output as it did 30 years ago, and it's still the largest sector in the economy. The catch? It's pulling all that off with only about 75% of the workers it used to have. It's not the Chinese stealing American jobs. It's technological progress, or, more bluntly, the robots, that we should be pointing at. In other words, the golden age of lemonade luck is over. The customers have stopped showing up. The market is shrinking, and making money is getting harder by the day. Actually, the situation is heading in the opposite direction entirely. Millions of smart, hard-working people are just grinding through each day, stuck in dead-end jobs and dead-end careers, with almost no hope on the horizon. It's not hard to see why so many of them are absolutely furious. Americans are slowly losing the drive to push forward, because their effort just isn't paying off the way it used to. The ones who do climb up aren't necessarily winning thanks to hard work or education. It's usually some combination of connections, family money, and good luck, at the very least, lucky enough not to get hit with a serious illness or some catastrophic accident. This isn't the American dream anymore, it's pretty much become its opposite. We're watching the slow comeback of a feudal-style social order. If you're lucky, you're born into silk sheets with a stack of privileges. If you're unlucky, sometimes the only thing left to do is hope things don't get any worse. The reality is that economic mobility in America is now the lowest of any developed country, about on par with Slovenia and Chile. Not exactly the gold standard of economic progress we like to talk about, sorry to my Slovenian and Chilean readers. Other Anglo countries like Australia and Canada, and even socialist-leaning nations like Denmark, Sweden, and Finland, all beat us out on this metric. So you're saying the American dream is dead? What are you getting at, Manson? Let me lay it out. Here's the closing act of what I'd call the lemonade stand disaster. The kids in the story at the start of the piece developed a belief system that boiled down to success equals hard work equals you deserve great things, and failure equals laziness equals you deserve bad things. Those takes can actually make perfect sense in a world with unlimited opportunity, unlimited resources, and an unlimited market. But when the wind shifts and the opportunities dry up, that same belief can quickly turn destructive. 1. The American dream tricks people into believing everyone always gets what they deserve. This belief is basically a cousin of what psychology calls the just world hypothesis. The you reap what you sow hypothesis pretty much goes like this: bad things happen to bad people, and good things happen to good people. And the opposite almost never happens. There are a couple of big problems with this hypothesis. A. It's totally wrong. B. Believing in it pretty much turns you into a jerk with zero empathy. We can all end up in a really bad place at some point, in one form or another. Maybe it's a car accident, maybe it's cancer, maybe it's getting mugged. Who doesn't have moments they'd rather forget? We all kind of get this, at least up to a point. And yet over 25% of Americans don't have any savings at all. You might say, well, maybe those people shouldn't have blown so much cash on flat-screen TVs. And that's only partially true. The reality is, the labor market is in the worst shape it's ever been. Real wages have basically stagnated for 50 straight years. The lemonade customers stopped showing up, and that quietly changed everything. Today, plenty of people work just as hard as they used to, or even harder, and end up in a much worse position. This stat might knock you flat: 45% of homeless people have jobs. You know that guy who smells faintly of cat urine and always sprawls on your favorite park bench? The one who asks you for $1 and gets snapped at, "Get a damn job, buddy." There's a decent chance he already has a job. And he's still asking for change. Brutal. 2. The American dream tricks us into measuring a person's worth by their accomplishments. If everyone really gets what they deserve, then there's apparently nothing wrong with judging people purely on what they've achieved. Success can turn you into a saint, a role model for the masses. Failure brands you as a lowlife, a societal stain to be avoided at all costs. This quietly spawns a shallow, surface-level culture, one that lets people like the Kardashians dominate the public's attention with nothing but scandal and money. Meanwhile, war veterans, the September 11th first responders, amazing teachers. Nobody cares. In some cases, society just lets them rot. The crowd's default assumption is, if these people were really so great, where's their money? Why can't they take care of themselves? Believing you get what you deserve feels great when the luck train keeps rolling and jobs keep multiplying. Or, to put it poetically, luck is like a big swell that lifts every boat to a higher plane. And too many of us forget that. We wake up convinced we got up there purely because of how cool and capable we are. Here's the ugly truth: people don't usually get back exactly what they put in. Bad things happen to good people, because every single one of us makes mistakes and runs into failure. If we refuse to accept this, we end up living in a fantasy, feeling on top of the world when things go well, then beating ourselves up and sinking into self-loathing the second the outside world stops cooperating. 3. The American dream quietly normalizes exploiting other people as fair. A few years ago, a friend of mine got tangled up in a court case for something he didn't actually do. Luckily, he hired a lawyer, showed up in court, defended himself, and was cleared. He thought it was all behind him. Then, about 6 months later, he gets a letter from some random scumbag law firm. The gist? They were threatening to sue him for the very thing the court had just declared him not guilty of 6 months earlier. After talking to his lawyer, my friend decided it was almost certainly an intimidation tactic, probably an automated letter sent out to scare defendants into paying a settlement just to avoid the risk of another trial. Let that sink in for a second. There's a lawyer out there, or, more likely, a whole pack of lawyers, literally walking into City Hall every day and pulling up the list of people who've been declared not guilty. These people, without knowing a single thing about the human beings on that list, just blast out threatening letters, hoping that maybe 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 will get scared enough to pay them off so they go away. This is straight up theft. And the worst part? It's totally legal. These slimy lawyers make a killing off it. They buy nice cars, live in fancy neighborhoods, and present themselves as polished gentlemen. Just picturing them sitting down with the morning paper, petting their pets, casually chatting about last night's game, it's enough to make my blood boil. Garbage humans, every one of them. So garbage that even typing out their playbook is enough to make me lose my cool. But in a society where your worth as a human being is measured by your economic success, there will always be perfectly reasonable excuses to defend even the rottenest behavior, like, if I manage to drain money out of you, that's your fault for being clueless and not paying attention. Now, with the lemonade disaster in full swing, opportunities keep shrinking, and people have to grind harder and harder just to hold on to what they've already got. So we start figuring out clever ways to scam the people around us just to feel more successful, even though, honestly, we're not. The methods just keep multiplying: selling sketchy erection pills online, throwing up fake websites built around tricking visitors into clicking ads, intimidating people the way those lawyers do above. It all makes sense in your own head, because you can still tell yourself you're working hard, and that this hard work will eventually carry you to the promised land of success. When you're a kid, you believe everything in this world is fundamentally fair. You go to school, listen to your parents, follow the grown-ups' instructions, and just assume things will work out. Then come the teenage years, and you suddenly realize that whole belief was basically nonsense, because life is nothing like the dream. You start collecting your first real failures and crises before adulthood even hits. Those failures slowly teach you that life isn't fair. Sometimes things just go really badly. Bad stuff still happens to good people, and good stuff happens to terrible ones. You quietly admit to yourself that you're not nearly as amazing as you used to think you were. Some teens manage to process this realization and actually grow up. They accept it and work on changing themselves to adapt to adult life. Others, especially the kids who got coddled by their families and ended up building their understanding of the world mostly from TV and the internet, don't adapt nearly as smoothly. The world stops obeying the belief system that got planted in their young brains, and instead of questioning the limits of those beliefs, they blame the world itself. You can probably guess how that ends. America is a young country. Culturally, we're basically a teenager, only a few generations removed from those innocent. Blessed thing about America is this: that choice is always still ours to make.
This was Capricorn Psychology. Patient minds, ancient questions, until the stars align again.